7 win at Charlotte. Sensational game for Anthony Davis. 42 points and 23 rebounds for AD. He had 21 points and 11 rebounds in the first quarter. The Lakers are at Philadelphia tonight. The Clippers lost by 2 at Phoenix, 111-109. A bright spot for the Clippers was seeing Kawhi Leonard play in the fourth quarter for the first time this season. Leonard played 6 minutes in the fourth, scoring 6 of his 17 points. Leonard has been on a minutes restriction to protect his right knee since he made his season debut on January 6th. He played a season-high 28 minutes last night. Tiger Woods is moving his Genesis Invitational Tournament to Torrey Pines in San Diego. The PGA event is February 13th to the 16th. Tiger normally hosts the tournament at the Riviera Country Club in Pacific Palisades. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
They can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips, I am a revolutionary.
On Saturday, February 22nd, you are invited to A Night with the Panthers, a special fundraiser dedicated to supporting Black Panther veterans who now require assistance with essential needs such as medicine, food, and housing. These Black Panther veterans championed human rights, fed the hungry, educated the community, and stood as powerful symbols of resistance and resilience. Despite their incredible sacrifices, loving and serving the people did not come with retirement plans or financial security. So, now it's our time to honor their legacy and ensure that they are cared for with the dignity they deserve. You can help by attending and supporting A Night with the Panthers, Saturday, February 22nd, 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Project 43 Team Post Center, 6841 Crenshaw Boulevard, Los Angeles. For more information, contact Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. That's Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Jerusalema ikhaya lami ilondoloze uhambe nami zungangishilana Jerusalema ikhaya lami ilondoloze uhambe nami zungangishilana
KBLA Talk 1580, and I am pleased to welcome into the space a new voice. Always great to speak with someone I've never interviewed before. He is an activist in his own right. He is the External Relations Officer of the Zimbabwe-Cuba Friendship Association and U.S. Correspondent to the Herald of Zimbabwe. He is a founding member of the Pan-African Liberation Organization and an internationalist who's taught African studies at Roots PCS for many years and taught community courses as well. Obi Egbuna Jr., welcome.
Welcome. I haven't seen you since we were in your sister Maria's living room at the tribute to your father. Good to talk to you again.
The Howard University tribute is what you're talking about.
Exactly. And I've worked with your sister Maria for 35 years and your brother Raz for 35 and a half years.
Raz,
so we're already family.
Yes, indeed. Raz is killing the game right now, isn't he?
Yes. The last thing we did with him was a couple of years ago. Mayor Raz Baraka was the only mayor in the country to allow his Health and Human Services to have a meeting with the Cuban Ministry of Public Health. to compare notes on dealing with the corona pandemic, because Cuba sent 57 brigades as part of the Henry Reeve International Medical Brigade Program. They sent 57 brigades to 40 nations all over the world. So Raz was the only mayor in this country courageous enough and visionary enough to even have engagement with them. And we're talking about hooking back up to do it. This time it won't be dealing with corona. It will be dealing with their vaccination and treatment for diabetes, where they've developed a treatment that prevents the amputation of limbs. And since we know how diabetes impacts our community, compromises our community, it would be a testament to his objectivity to make that happen. And that's very strategic, him being in New Jersey, which we'll get into later.
Well, I mean, let's talk about that, programs like that. It seems like even under Biden, well, I don't even want to say even, maybe especially under Biden, the international foreign policy of this country, to me, lurched rightward, even in comparison to Obama, who actually opened up relations relatively to Cuba. I feel like this iteration of the Trump administration is even more conservative, authoritarian, unvarnished, and unapologetically fascist than the last one. So how do you see this administration impacting programs like that and your ability to even have exchanges like that around diabetes or COVID or anything else with a nation like Cuba?
We did it under the Trump administration. We had a fight for the Henry Reeve Medical Brigade to come here and be able to treat people. The same way under the Bush administration, we fought for them to go to the Gulf region during Hurricane Katrina, where they made an offer saying that not only would they stay in Katrina, but they would treat the people in Katrina. They would stay there until the public hospitals were functioning and running again. And if you know anything about healthcare, those were the two first public hospitals. It does not matter. If you go all the way back to Kennedy, who after the Bay of Pigs invasion, the CIA initiative tried to bring about regime change in Cuba, and then comes back to the coast of Cuba. Every government has been in favor of that blockade. The Clinton administration, under pressure from Ted Turner and General Electric, talking about normalizing relations. He took Cuba off the Pentagon security list. The Bush administration comes in, and Condoleezza Rice calls them an outpost of tyranny. When Obama was campaigning the first time in Florida with the Cuban American National Foundation, which was created during the Reagan administration, he said Cuba has never known democracy. But then after pressure from the masses of the people, he went there and said, relaxing the sanctions. But as Africans, we know what that means. If you told someone that was about to be lynched, you'd relax the noose on their neck, what would they say?
So the bottom line, you're saying it makes no difference. I feel like this particular incarnation of the Trump administration is different. I really do. Maybe not radically different, but it's bolder, it's more organized, and it's more, it's even lurched further right. I guess
because of the aggressiveness of Menendez, the senator of the Foreign Relations Committee, was put Cuba on the list, the State Department's list of nations they accuse of state-sponsored terrorism. Biden removes them 48 hours from it, and then Trump puts them right back on it. But if you compare Biden's Latin American policy and African policy to Trump's Latin American and African policy to Obama's Latin American and African policy, they're the same. There are just there are just certain maneuvers that happen. But if we're organizing like we're supposed to, we'll be able to deal with it. So being under Biden for 4 years prepares us for whatever Trump throws our way.
I mean, it's a good way of looking at it. I have gotten a different reaction in Africa. When I've been traveling in Africa, what I've heard from Africans there is, it's harder to come here. It's harder to do business. I'm not talking come here as in move here as an immigrant. I'm talking about come here on a trip to do business, to do a conference, to do international relations. I heard a lot of anxiety and also anger that, well, we're not even going to do business with the United States because this man makes it so impossible to get visas, because he calls our countries ish-holes, because of the, now this was even before we had tariffs round one, but before we got tariffs on steroids where we are now.
Okay. And I understand the sentiment, my sister. I'm the former U.S. correspondent to Zimbabwe's national newspaper, but I wrote for the newspaper from 2006 to 2021. So I can use Zimbabwe also as a barometer for this conversation. It was the Bush administration that imposed the Zimbabwe Democracy and Economic Recovery Act, the sanctions on Zimbabwe for reclaiming 70% of their most arable land from 4,500 white commercial farmers. But Joe Biden was a co-sponsor of that bill. Hillary Clinton was a co-sponsor of that bill. Russ Feingold was the co-sponsor of that bill. And every administration, and then President Obama, when he was still Senator Obama, wrote President Bush a letter in 2006 saying, don't lift the sanctions on Zimbabwe till the dark cloud of Robert Mugabe was moved. So every administration maintained sanctions on Zimbabwe.
I think Zimbabwe is a good example because they have been isolated not just by the United States, but by all of this sort of block of Western nations when they choose to punish somebody. And I would have thought that it had eased to a degree. My experience traveling there, year before last, 2023. Yeah, that's when we went to Zimbabwe. Was that you still couldn't even fly into Zimbabwe directly. You still had to use a local airline because the Western powers, which is weird because they still own a lot of businesses and land there. But there's still many sanctions.
No question. And whenever you look at Africa, you focus on the policies of administrations, but you also look at the business sector. The Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds have been trying to overthrow the Zimbabwean government so they can take over the tobacco industry. In the same way the C&P Telephone Company was behind Patrice Lumumba's assassination. Richard Branson and Virgin Airlines have been working for the overthrow of the Zimbabwean government so they could take over the tourism industry. So when you have corporations pushing an agenda in conjunction with political parties pushing an agenda, in conjunction with think tanks pushing an agenda, Zimbabwe has 400 civil society groups, more than any other nation in Africa. But the thing that we have always done, Sister Dominique, is learning way back from the overthrow of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah on February 24th, 1966, at the same day that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Dr. King had their only meeting of the minds in Chicago. We look at what the positive attributes are of these nations that they attack. So they used to say that Nkrumah had this romantic concept of a unified Africa, but he was negligent in the affairs of Ghana. But we know he built 68 factories in Ghana in 9 years, a tire factory, a rubber factory, a manganese factory, a bicycle factory. The roads of Ghana were better than the roads of their former colonizer. And a month before his overthrow, he built the first hydroelectrical dam in African history, the Akasambo, that not only gave all of Ghana 100% electricity, but gave Togo and Benin 50% of their territorial spaces. And in the case of Zimbabwe, they always talked about human rights. They have a 97% literacy rate. They had the most advanced programs to deal with HIV/AIDS in their nation, the most advanced program to deal with cholera in the Southern African region. But and of course, 68% of the farming on that land they reclaimed was done by women. No other nation in the world, not just Africa, where agriculture is the backbone of society, can claim that women are empowered on that level. And if you go back and look at your calendar, the appointment of Joyce Majulu to the vice presidency of Zimbabwe is the reason that Ellen Johnson Sirleaf became the president of Liberia. The reason that the African Union has as agenda item number one, agriculture and food security, is because of the land reclamation program in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
And it's the reason that the African National Congress is under pressure 31 years after Madiba Nelson Mandela became the president, raising the question, why is the overwhelming majority of the land still in the hands of the former white apartheid colonialist rulers? So we always look at these issues through the lenses of our people.
Okay. I'm up against the clock here, sir. And we got a lot of stuff to get to, so we will continue this conversation when we come forward. If you have a question or conversation, 800-920-1580. We're talking with Obi Egbuna Jr. and it's KBLA Talk 1580.
A safe place to go loud. A great place for progressive politics. KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580 invites you to join the Inner City Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles as it presents a Los Angeles Wildfire Benefit Concert on Sunday, February 2nd, 4 p.m. at the First United Methodist Church, 500 East Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena. Join us for a powerful evening of music, unity, and support as talented performers from our community come together to raise funds for those affected by the wildfires. The concert is free, and all proceeds raised will benefit those who have sustained unimaginable losses. It's the Inner City Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles in concert, Sunday, February 2nd, 4 p.m. at the First United Methodist Church in Pasadena, located at 500 East Colorado Boulevard. All contributions should be made payable to the California Community Foundation Wildfire Community Fund. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
So my home is also my office, and before I can focus, every room's gotta be clean. That means tidying up and spraying my Febreze Air Mist. Ooh, that's fresh. Febreze Air Mist scents are all high quality. They fight any weird funk, and they give my air an instant boost of freshness. So not only does my home smell good, I feel good too. After I Febreze, it's time to start my day.
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la. Every morning, we rise and shine, make breakfast, and brush away the night's rest. These routines help us start the day off right. Nature-made vitamins are a simple step in that daily care regimen. Multivitamins with daily essentials, clinically studied probiotics for gut health support, magnesium to help relax the body. Nature-made is made to care for you every day. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DiPrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
I can tell you're a professor. That whenever I get professors or pastors on, I ask one question and you all go into your sermon. We're talking with Obi Egbuna Jr., an expert on Pan-Africanism and the continent, and certainly interested in where we're going right now. Not just in terms of what the U.S.'s plans are, but the international landscape, which is changing rapidly. And we have someone in our YouTube chat asking about BRICS. They say they don't trust BRICS, and we have someone else saying that BRICS is exactly what these nations need to be doing to counteract these Western powers. BRICS, an intergovernmental organization, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, and maybe forgetting some. Thoughts on that?
Oh, well, the thing is, every day that I wake up and I focus on Africa, as the last line of Lift Every Voice and Sing tells us, be true to our God, be true to our native land, I just look at it like this. While we're having this conversation, Forbes magazine says there are about 2,800 billionaires in the world, worth about $15 trillion. And at the same time, there's 710 million people who live on $1.90 a day. 409 million of them can be found on the African continent. And at the same time, our people in this country, U.S.-born Africans, are 43% of the homeless. I just look at this as a fight for us to take control of Africa, to take control of our resources, which puts us on a collision course with the United States Agency for International Development, the Corporate Council on Africa, and all those who have benefited immensely from the rape and plunder of Africa. So whatever vehicles we are exploring to address that situation, we must.
And somebody else is in here, and these are the conversations that we've had when you weren't present too, which is like, well, they say they're giving China the side eye as China gets more of a foothold Also, it's not in the chat, but Russia now, right? And particularly when we look at what's happening in West Africa as they work on ejecting the French out the front door, is Russia, is Putin coming in the back?
Well, I mean, one thing I think we've earned the right to do is pick what Europeans we love and what Europeans we hate. We should at least be granted that courtesy. I could pick my own white man. So, I mean, once again, it's a comparison of Russia's policy towards Africa and the United States and other Western entities. There was a picture of Putin that went around a few years ago that caused a lot of spirited discussion, acrimonious debate, if you will. He was standing next to Emerson Mnangagwa, the current president of Zimbabwe, and he was standing next to Samora Machel, the leader of the Mozambican Revolution. And the picture was taken in Tanzania. And if you know anything about the Soviet Union, they gave military assistance to the liberation movements in Zimbabwe, Namibia, Angola, and Mozambique, who all won their independence through arms. So, and the United States, in return, supported developed 2 CIA mercenary units, UNITA in Angola, Renamo in Mozambique, who Bayard Rustin, one of our most decorated civil rights personalities, supported. And his reason for supporting UNITA is, he said, to prevent the rise Cuba's influence in Southern Africa. And who would have a problem with Cuba's influence in Southern Africa? Because between 1986 and 1996, for example, 3,000 Zimbabwean teachers went to Cuba for training, and they're the backbone of an educational system that boasts a 97% literacy rate today. So whoever wants to attack leaders in the world, instinctively, we're going to look at our relationship to those places and what's in our best interest. And we're intelligent enough to do that, and experience is the best teacher.
I think we're intelligent enough to do it, but I think a lot of these scenarios are a lot more complex than people are led to believe or understand, and that's part of what I'm trying to get to right here. I don't know how much time you spend on social media. I admit I spend too much, but there's a lot of conversation on social media right now about talk about the alliance of West African states. It's
the Sahel Alliance.
Yeah.
And I'm going to introduce you to a 25-year-old sister named Inem Richardson. She lives in Burkina Faso. She started a children's center in dedication to Thomas Sankara, the great revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso, who the current president appears to be following his footsteps. But before people talk about the Sahel, and I'm also a children's playwright, and they've done one of our plays, and we have a something that we did that we're hoping to submit to the Pan-African Film Festival. Shout out to our people there in LA who organize that every year faithfully, where we have children who did one of our poems in Burkina Faso, simultaneous with children who we teach in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, simultaneous with children that we work with in South Carolina. So when you take a look at what Burkina Faso has dealt with, what Mali has dealt with, and how the CIA overthrew Modibo Keïta in 1968, and how the United States puppet Moussa Traoré ran that country into the ground, and you look at what the West has done in Niger, then you understand the anger, you understand the tenacity, and you understand the unwavering commitment towards self-determination that the young people in that part have. And that sentiment has existed. And remember, that's in quote-unquote Francophone West Africa. And you look at one man that was the most faithful ally the United States had in that area, who fed Boigny. And Nkrumah's overthrow was planned in his living room. Amilcar Cabral of Guinea-Bissau's assassination was planned in his living room. Thomas Sankara's assassination was planned in his living room. And all we're doing now is reversing the tide so it can be in our favor. So people shouldn't be critical and not be involved. Work with the people over there, see what they need, see how they see things, and work with them directly.
Well, what I'm hearing on social media, in the mainstream press, I hear the critique. But what I'm hearing on social media is quite the opposite. It's sort of an uncritical adulation for these brothers. Yes,
yeah.
And we're talking about Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, to be clear.
I would say Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going.
No, you said what you would say is...
No, what I would say to people, one thing about social media is we want social media to turn from a commentary space to an active space. So if you embrace what they're doing and you belong to organizations here, engage them and begin to work with them. And we'll leave our contact information. And one of the projects, because that sister's out of California, E.M. Richardson, if you want to begin to work directly with Burkina Faso, we can't think of a better project. And she's not only tied to, she's on Africa Stream now, and she just went with the Sahel. So the Sahel just sent a delegation a month and a half ago to Cuba. It was their first trip as a delegation to Cuba, and it was a success. So if people want, and one of the things we're talking with them about, talking with people in the Congo about, is beginning to send medical support to the Cuban doctors on the African continent, where they have 4,000 doctors dispersed throughout Africa. So if people want to work with them, which is an alternative to the Bush Foundation, which is an alternative to the Bill Gates Foundation, which is an alternative to the United States Agency for International Development, which are intelligence agents masquerading as diplomats. So if we want an alternative to that, we have the ability and the will to come up with activities and get our organizations to be involved in those activities. So people should do that. Don't let discussion distract you from service.
But I do think, and I think discussion, service, and understanding are all part of it, hopefully. So when you look at the mainstream press, they're saying that, okay, these are not democratically elected folks. They had coups, right, which took over their countries, and that violence, supposedly Islamic extremist group violence, is up in the region.
Yeah, but what's laughable about that is, when has the United States been indifferent to violent military coups? Mobutu, your creation. Bukasa in the Central African Republic, your creation. UNITA and Renamo that we mentioned earlier, your creation. The revolving door of military regimes in Nigeria, your creation. You invented military neocolonialism in Africa. Traore and Mali, who we just mentioned, your creation. So what, are they all of a sudden having a change of heart, what alcoholics call a moment of clarity, and they're against military neocolonialist regimes? If they were a military neocolonialist regime, they would have the backing of the State Department, the Republicans, the Democrats, the intelligence community, the Pentagon, like they have always had. I think where the confusion is, and who created the U.S. Africa Military Command Project, that fascist genocidal outlet? Wasn't that Susan Rice through her writings at the Brookings Institution, and Obama bought into it hook, line, and sinker? So anytime they're attacking African governments for being too militaristic, we know that the tide is moving in our favor, because that is who they impose on us. However, though, this is what we have to be clear about. We have had revolutionary governments where the leadership has a military background. Gamal Abdel Nasser was military, but he didn't run Egypt like an army.
I mean, Dwight Eisenhower was military.
He didn't run Libya that way.
Yeah. We've got news, traffic, and sports right here. I have a couple more follow-up questions. I'm sure you know that, but I think this is important because a lot of folks are talking about, the Sahel Alliance and what's happening in West Africa, and a lot of folks being inspired by it and or confused by it. It's a great conversation talking with Obi Egbuna Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. President Trump has signed a number of executive orders related to the military. He signed an executive order reinstating those discharged for refusing the COVID vaccine, banning transgender individuals from serving, and eliminating diversity programs in the military. California Governor Gavin Newsom criticized House Speaker Mike Johnson for suggesting wildfire aid be linked to state voting ID laws, noting Louisiana's federal aid after hurricanes. Quaker church congregations are suing the Department of Homeland Security over a policy allowing ICE arrests at sensitive locations, arguing it deters attendance and obstructs religious liberty. The lawsuit was filed in Maryland federal court. And a new study at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine could lead to a breakthrough for paralysis patients. It aims to help paralyzed patients control devices with their thoughts using Neuralink's brain-computer interface. I'm Bree Wood on the Black Information Network, your home for Black News First.
Del Taco's new Chipotle Chicken Burrito and Bean Rice and Cheese Burrito, packed with flavor, made with fresh ingredients, and found on Del's Real Deals menu. You heard that right. These burritos on a value meal with everything under $3. Look at Del Taco, hooking us up.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers won their fourth straight with a 112-107 win at Charlotte. Sensational game for Anthony Davis. 42 points and 23 rebounds for AD. He had 21 points and 11 rebounds in the first quarter. The Lakers are at Philadelphia tonight. The Clippers lost by 2 at Phoenix, 111-109. A bright spot for the Clippers was seeing Kawhi Leonard play in the fourth quarter for the first time this season. Leonard played 6 minutes in the fourth, scoring 6 of his 17 points. Leonard has been on a minutes restriction to protect his right knee since he made his season debut on January 6th. He played a season-high 28 minutes last night. Tiger Woods is moving his Genesis Invitational Tournament to Torrey Pines in San Diego. The PGA event is February 13th to the 16th. Tiger normally hosts the tournament at the Riviera Country Club in Pacific Palisades. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
You say you'd never give in to a meltdown and never fill your feed with kid photos. You say you'd never put a pacifier in your mouth to clean it and never let them run wild through the grocery store. So when you say you'd never let them get into a car without you there, no, it can happen. 1 in 4 hot car deaths happen when a kid gets into an unlocked car and can't get out. Never happens. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Did you know that 1 in 4 people seeking treatment for ED are under 40? HIMS can help. Get started at hims.com/joy. Through hims.com, you can access a full range of treatment options for ED, including daily or as-needed meds through a 100% online process. To start your free online visit and save up to 95%, go to hims.com/joy.
As we go a little something like this.
Hey, it is me, D.L. Hugo, and I am thrilled to be heard weekdays in my hometown on KBLA Talk 1580. So check out the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 p.m. exclusively on KBLA Talk 1580. We got a whole lot to talk about, let me tell you. That's for the real.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting rules for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop, opt out. Consult a doctor prior to use.
Wow, you look amazing. What have you been doing?
I'm sure you've heard of Ozempic, Wegovy, and the other GLP-1 medications, right? Well, I found this great company called Zelfie. If you qualify, their providers can prescribe medications like Ozempic and Wegovy and other GLP-1 medications that are 80 to 90% less expensive, all 100% online.
I can get GLP-1 medications for 80 to 90% less and do it all online? No doctor's office or pharmacy?
Yes, Zelfie can provide semaglutide or tirzepatide, the active ingredients in Ozempic and other expensive GLP-1s, but for 80 to 90% less and shipped directly to your door.
How do I get started with Zelfie?
Just send them a text.
Text BEST to 200-300 to get started today with Zelfie. Get the same active ingredients in Wegovy or Ozempic, but for 80 to 90% less and 100% online. Don't wait. Text BEST to 200-300 right now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text BEST to 200-300. That's BEST to 200-300. BEST to 200-300.
They can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips, and I am a revolutionary.
On Saturday, February 22nd, you are invited to A Night with the Panthers, a special fundraiser dedicated to supporting Black Panther veterans who now require assistance with essential needs such as medicine, food, and housing. These Black Panther veterans championed human rights, fed the hungry, educated the community, and stood as powerful symbols of resistance and resilience. Despite their incredible sacrifices, loving and serving the people did not come with retirement plans or financial security. So, now it's our time to honor their legacy and ensure that they are cared for with the dignity they deserve. You can help by attending and supporting A Night with the Panthers, Saturday, February 22nd, 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Project 43 Team Post Center, 6841 Crenshaw Boulevard, Los Angeles. For more information, contact Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. That's Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com. or call 707-554-2784. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for progressive talk radio. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
Obi Egbuna Jr., my guest, and you're welcome to get in the conversation, 800-920-1580. That's always the case when I am on the mic. Just want to let you know, tomorrow Sam Lewis will be joining me. He's the executive director of the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. He'll be joining me in the final hour of the show. And we are talking to founding member of the Pan-African Liberation Organization. He's a scholar and a teacher, as well as he mentioned, a children's playwright. So just following up a few things on the what's happening in the Sahel states. This part of what emerged with at the same time was the dissolution of ECOWAS, the West African Alliance, or at least their withdrawal from it. How do you view that?
I mean, you have to understand what the alliance represents. It's a working tribute, my favorite kind. We're organizers. What they're following is the template of the Guinea-Ghana-Mali Federation between Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and the Convention People's Party, Ahmed Sékou Touré and the Democratic Party of Guinea, and what Modibo Keïta had in Mali, where they were looking at one currency, one military, and one political party. And that federation actually set the foundation for us to have the Southern African Development Community, the Economic Community of West African States, NAPAD, COMESA, and all the different regional bodies we have. So we have to have regional stability in Africa and continental stability simultaneous. So they're just being true to history, and I'm impressed because they're younger people, and we know that young people have a tendency to be historically dismissive. Also, the impact that they're having, and it's simultaneous with this Afro-descendant movement that's been spearheaded out of Venezuela for the last 10 years, where under Comandante Hugo Chavez's leadership, and now his successor, Maduro, where Venezuela is pushing the concept, we're not African Americans, we're not Black Americans, we're not Afro-Latino, we're not Afro-Caribbean, we are African descendants. And that is challenging the white supremacist imperialist definition of America, which is so fascist that Mussolini and Hitler would be envious if they were still amongst us. So North America, South America, Central America, Latin America represents over 200 million Africans who are here because of the first form of public transportation, the captivity vessels commonly referred to as slave ships. So that's why if 200 million Africans in the Western Hemisphere unite, while this is going on the African continent, we will have more power than we've ever realized. And as a matter of fact, real quickly, in June of last year, we had, for African Liberation Day, we had a program dealing with drugs and guns in the Western Hemisphere. So we had Freeway Ricky Ross right there in L.A., our brother, right next to Anton White and Eric Hicks, the two youngest people to be charged as drug kingpins in U.S. history that did 30 years. We had them next to the Nicaraguan ambassador. We had them next to the leader of the Afro-Cumbe movement in Venezuela. We had them next to Africans in Mexico and Honduras who want to bring the United States on charges because of the gun trafficking and 250,000 guns show up in Mexico every year, which is attributed to violence there. So because what people forget is they dump crack in South Central Los Angeles to overthrow the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, and they wanted to overthrow the Sandinistas in Nicaragua because Kennedy said, another socialist revolution should not be allowed to flourish in the Western Hemisphere. So they wanted to dispose of Nicaragua the way they assassinated Maurice Bishop in Grenada, overthrew Allende in Chile. So this is business as usual. So we just have to be prepared in Africa and the diaspora and move in harmony together. And that's why that conference they just had in Cuba for the 10th anniversary of this Peoples of Afro Descent movement is necessary. And I think that it's something that people who are embracing the foundational Black America concept and the ADOS concept should look at very carefully, very critically, very objectively, and very honestly.
Okay, I don't know that I got a lot of information out of what you said, but I don't know that it clarified for me why Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso can't have their own collective and still be part of ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States.
Well, because ECOWAS is more diplomatic, but them having a regional alliance gives them a chance to maneuver on a strategic and tactical level where they would be diplomatically handcuffed by ECOWAS. And because of neocolonialism's prevalence at the government level, 98% of our governments in Africa are neocolonialist governments who are in servitude to their former colonizer. So we need other creative tactics and other creative vehicles. And the only reason I brought those other things up is because that is why they're being invited and being embraced everywhere, because what they've done on a strategical and tactical level, it resonates with so many of our people who are suffering at the hands of the same oppressive forces. That's why I brought that up.
I mean, there's no question when you go to the first African country I traveled to was Ghana, and I've been there one other time since. I've been to other nations, but there's no question when you go to South Africa, you can see why you need to get the land. I mean, I feel like the setup, the caste system remains in South Africa, and just because apartheid is over doesn't mean it went away. And that's
it's just what it had a lot to do with is a lot of people have had an expectation of the African National Congress, but they probably never studied their history. As you know, sister, they were influenced by the NAACP. They were created 3 years later.
So you're saying you don't have to get the land? I mean, is that your point? We don't have to get the land? Because I still want my 40 acres.
No. What I'm saying is I would not expect them, because the reason that the Mangalizo Sobukwe stepped away from the African National Congress and the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania was born is because the ANC would not push the question of land. So the youth started another organization, and their slogan was Izwe letu I Africa, the land is ours. That's why what Zimbabwe did resonated in South Africa. And then Namibia started a land reclamation program. So self-determination has always been the order of the day amongst the masses. And this is why the conference that took place 24 years ago, the United Nations Conference on Racism, Xenophobia, and Other Related Intolerances, scared the United States so much. And they threatened the conference, if you remember, they said if our captivity was an agenda item, if Palestine was an agenda item, and reparations was an agenda item. It wasn't just because of those items, but it creates a climate and atmosphere to look at other practical examples. And that land reclamation program in Zimbabwe scared them to death. That's why the Bush administration, the Obama administration, the Trump administration echoed the same sentiment in the diplomatic space. Zimbabwe is a small country, but it represents a rather peculiar problem for our interest in Africa.
It's a beautiful country.
Because it forced the ANC to deal with the question of land. It forced West African neocolonialist governments to deal with the questions of land and agriculture and women's empowerment and healthcare and all of the issues that were the best attributes of their society. No question about that.
All right, before we run out of time, I want to go to Morris. He's been waiting to ask you a question. Morris from Inglewood, you're on the air. Welcome.
Hey, good morning, everybody. And listen, do not take KBLA for granted. All right, you better appreciate every day that you hear these people talking on the radio. I'm not crazy. And I want to say something to your guests. Sir, are you familiar that BRICS now controls 55% of the world economy, and that American sanctions don't have the same kick that they used to have? And I know we shouldn't fall in love with people, but I love me some Ibrahim Touré. Please comment on him and what he's doing in Burkina Faso, where he kicked out the French. He's taking over his agriculture. He's taking over his mines. They're even producing gold bars. And I think it'd be good for African Americans to start investing in Burkina Faso the same way white people invested in Microsoft. And thank you very much.
Yeah, we've been talking about that. We've been talking about that for a significant portion of the show, because one of the things that Osajiko Dr. Kwame Nkrumah taught us, he said defending liberated territories was even more important than waging resistance in territories we were seeking to reclaim. So I would say don't just support Burkina Faso, don't just support Niger, don't just support Mali. Defend Zimbabwe, defend Mozambique, defend Namibia. Matter of fact, you're right there in Los Angeles, defend Eritrea. Eritrea was the only nation in Africa with free education and free health care for their people. And you have a connection. Ermias Eshedam, y'all call him Nipsey Hussle, though, who told you out of his own mouth that the reason he left the Rolling 60 Crips is because he went to Eritrea.
He didn't leave. He didn't leave the 60s, by the way.
Well, he was saying
They're
that
right
he
up the
moved
street.
away from genocidal behavior.
Yes, that's different
because he
denouncing
went
the neighborhood.
because he went home. He learned about his revolution. So the community in Los Angeles should be built in his name, in his honor, should be building ties with Eritrea as we speak right now. Because when you look at their educational, and 33% of their guerrilla fighters were women. So imagine Harriet Tubman in a guerrilla war. Imagine Ida B. Wells in a guerrilla war. Imagine Septima Clark in a guerrilla war. That's what you had. So we should look to the nations in Africa that are standing up to our former colonizers and embrace them and come up with our own independent projects with them. Don't go through the State Department to do it. Don't go through don't go through the United States Agency for International Development to do it. Let us do it at the people-to-people level. This is why we should support the Cuban doctors' work in Africa. This is because that would be an alternative to the Red Cross. That would be the alternative to the Bush Foundation, like we were saying before. So if Burkina Faso, since that's current, is your springboard, you can use that as a springboard, but work with all the nations in Africa and monitor the activity that Africans born in the U.S. are doing on the African continent so they're not compromising the legacy of service, like those in Ghana who got Ghana looking like a HBCU homecoming or Freaknik, which is disgusting, which is embarrassing, but we can have alternatives to that.
Well,
in Ghana, you got a school in Keswick called the People's School. You can look it up online.
Hold that thought if you would.
A brother born in Seattle.
Yeah, we'll continue this conversation when we come forward. We're talking with Obi Egbuna. We're going to get the scoop on that school he's talking about as we continue on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cal Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The following is not a contest and is a paid advertisement by Family Vacation Getaways for the purpose of soliciting sales of vacation ownership. For complete details, please visit fvgradio.com. If you want a complimentary stay in Cancun at a luxury resort, then Family Vacation Getaways may have your ticket to paradise. We're giving away a 5-day and 4-night stay to the first qualified 50 callers who can name an animal that lays eggs and is not a bird. An animal that lays eggs and is not a bird. Do you know it? Call now, 800-868-6431, 800-868-6431. You may also be eligible for an exciting bonus vacation to Orlando, Florida for just $398. And don't worry about anything ruining your plans. We can extend your travel up to 18 months. Name an animal that lays eggs and is not a bird, and you may be eligible to get a complimentary Cancun resort stay and an optional bonus vacation to Orlando for just $398. What are you waiting for? Call 800-868-6431. Again, call 800-868-6431 and give us your answer.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. Every girl deserves a chance to shine. That's the belief behind Forgiving for Living, Inc. Since 1999, this organization has been empowering at-risk girls ages 13 to 18, helping them overcome behavioral and mental health challenges. Founder Wendy Gladney's personal journey inspired the mission to give girls hope and purpose through the power of forgiveness. Through their ambassador program, workshops, and annual conference, Forgiving for Living has touched over 3,000 young lives, providing mentoring, life skills, training, and tools for building self-esteem and confidence. You can make a difference. Visit forgivingforliving.org to donate, volunteer, become a mentor, or find help for a young girl in need. Forgiving for Living, Inc., building brighter futures for young girls. Visit forgivingforliving.org today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
And we've touched on so many topics that we will not have time to go deeply into, but Obi Egbuna Jr., you were talking about this situation in Ghana. I don't know, maybe we might not agree on that. That's okay. I don't know that I think it's a bad thing that people are going there to party and all of that, and at least they're visiting. But you were talking about a school there.
Yeah, my brother Imole Seka he's been there since 1999, but he has a school in a place called Keswa. And the whole curriculum is around Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's books. And he has a 100% graduation rate, and the school is free for the people of Ghana. But I just wanted to say, and I think that everything we're talking about today, if we're going to deal with these issues, we have to make sure that the Congressional Black Caucus, the National Conference of Black State Legislators, the African American Mayoral Alliance are on the same page. As Brother Malcolm said, control the politics of your community. So we don't have repeat performances that are not in our advantage. So when sanctions were imposed on Zimbabwe, not one member of the CDC voted against those sanctions. 4 abstained. The CDC supported the extradition of Assata Shakur, our great panther, the mother of urban guerrilla warfare. And we have a campaign right now, Sister Dominique and listeners. It's called the Assata Shakur Cuba Defense Campaign, to get Assata Shakur off the FBI and Homeland Security's terrorist list. She's not a terrorist. To get the $2 million bounty off her head. She ain't Billy the Kid. She's not Doc Holliday, that whole nonsensical culture. And to get Cuba off this country, the State Department's list of nations they accuse of state-sponsored terrorism. Maybe they're confusing Cuba with Zionist Israel, which is the only other nation in the world, ironically, in favor of the blockade on Cuba. So I just wanted to mention the practical things that we're fighting for, and just wanted to let people know the analysis is good, but your understanding will increase when your involvement increases. So when you see certain nations that take genuine steps towards self-determination and it resonates with our struggle here, embrace them, work with them, learn with them while they learn from you. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Dominique, and I hope we didn't disappoint.
Not at all. As concerning the campaign around Assata Shakur, is there a website, a petition, or something that you would like people to connect with?
We have an appeal. We are going back to our culture. So we have something like David Walker's appeal, like the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey's appeal to white America, like Du Bois' appeal in 47, like the appeal Brother Malcolm was working on before the FBI, New York Police Department, and CIA had other ideas. So we have that. We'll make that available to you. And we want all organizations in L.A. to sign on to this. All organizations on the West Coast, all organizations in this country to sign on to this. And we're going to let the Black Caucus know, because when they supported an initiative to extradite her over 20 years ago, and they were approached by our community, they said they didn't know that Joanne Chesimard and Assata Shakur were the same person. That's like saying you don't know Muhammad Ali and Cassius Clay are the same person, or Kwame Ture and Stokely Carmichael. But we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But this time when we come to them, they must endorse that and step out of the way and don't try to do anything to undermine it. She should not be on the terrorist list. There should not be a $2 million bounty on her head. And all the ex-Panthers living should support that. The opponents of the Panthers in the past, like Maulana Karenga, should support that. Everybody in this country should support that, especially those of you who are the symbolic citizens of Wakanda.
We just have a few minutes here left. Talk a little bit in these few minutes about what's happening in the Congo right now, this minute. I think that the rebels have taken over the Goma airport, if I'm not mistaken, today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, talk about that.
I think in the Congo, once again, it's a question of understanding because, what we've always used as a template is the coming out party of Susan Rice, when she, at the orders of Madeleine Albright, came up with a plan to reinvade the Congo to reestablish Mobutu's network. And the Congo is still reeling from the Mobutu's network. So I think the most important thing we can deal with in the Congo is to deal with the humanitarian issues. And the most important, and I think that that's the domain for Africans in the diaspora. That's what we should invest in. And I think that the most important thing there is if we work very closely with the Friends of the Congo. I work with Maurice Carney for over 30 years, their executive director. We are sitting down to come up with a plan to support the Cuba's doctors in the Congo, not just in Kinshasa, but in Brazzaville, so that we can begin to deal with that issue. And we just did a class on the legacy, connecting Lumumba and Dr. King's legacy, and we had children in the Congo. A few years ago, we did a play called You Understand Exactly What I'm Saying, in tribute to Paul Robeson, and we had students in the Congo participate in Lingala. So we should just use this as an opportunity to build people-to-people relations with the Congo, and then we can figure out who we want to identify with politically and make sure that we are not an extended mouthpiece of the Democrats, the Republicans, the CIA, the Pentagon, or any other imperialist outlet at this moment in history, and correct the mistakes of those who came. And the biggest mistake in the Congo was made by none other than Muhammad Ali, one of our greatest. When he took Mobutu's blood money, him and George Foreman, for $5 million apiece, and Don King took that blood money and fought there, that was the equivalent of spitting on the grave of Lumumba. But they didn't know any better, so that's the privilege of studying mistakes. You can engage in activity to correct them. So that's how we did to deal with the Congo and all of Africa on a people-to-people level. Be prepared for the collision course with the most brutal and ruthless rapers and exploiters of Africa. And we got another play that we're about to do.
We're up against the clock here. I'm sorry. We'll have to do a part 2 because it is time for the Tavis Smiley Show. But Obi Egbuna Jr., thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you, sister.
Yeah, I appreciate you. The clock waits for no woman. Tavis Smiley is next. He's got a great show on tap for you. Like always, don't forget to join us on socials, KBLA Talk 1580, or me. I'm at DiPrima Radio, DIPRIMA Radio. My quote for today will go to Kwame Nkrumah. He says, "Forward ever, backward never." And, of course, we can keep these conversations going on social media. Love to do it. You can find me at DiPrima Radio, DIPRIMA, and then radio. Like my mama, the great Diane DiPrima, used to say, history is now. Like I always add, we are making it together. And we are going to have Sam Lewis in here tomorrow. We've got Wealth Building Wednesday. So until tomorrow, be well, be informed. One love.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 things you should after hurricanes. Quaker church congregations are suing the Department of Homeland Security over a policy allowing ICE arrests at sensitive locations, arguing